Welcome to the DC Cinematic Multiverse, the show where I'm going to review and rank every single live-action DC movie. Films covering the veritable repertoire of superheroes, supervillains, and everyone in between. I'm going to tackle each and every movie in their own video and in chronological release order. So today I'm going to start right at the beginning with the first ever feature-length film based on a DC character, Superman and the Mole Men from 1951. I'll go over some history and context leading up to the film, then briefly explain its plot before I enter the review. So without further ado, let's just jump right into it. So DC Comics all really started with the debut of Superman in Action Comics issue 1, released on April 18th of 1938. But the first adaptation to ever take place was on radio only 2 years later. The show was called My Adventures with Superman and ran for a staggering 2,000 episodes. The first appearance of the superhero on the screen was a year later in 1941 in a series of animated shorts made by Fleischer Studios. Maybe I'll take a closer look at these if I ever cover the animated history of DC, but for now we turn our sights over to the next video endeavor. It took a while after these first couple of projects before we got to see Superman portrayed by an actor in a live-action studio. In 1948, Columbia Studios released a 15-part movie serial totaling about 244 minutes. Film serials have definitely fallen out of fashion in the modern day, especially after the advent of TV. The format was useful for telling short but connected stories, often ending with cliffhangers to bring people back to theaters for the next segment. I feel like that was out of the scope of this video, so instead we finally get to the subject that we are discussing today, Superman and the Mole Men. This was the first ever feature film starring the character, or any other DC character for that matter. It was a B movie, meaning it would be a low-budget affair to fill the secondary slot of a double feature. Another practice that was core to the movie-going experience then, but was almost completely done away with by the end of the 50s in America. Due to its low budget, the filming and creation of the film was done as quickly as possible. The entirety of filming was completed within just 2 weeks. And as far as I can tell, it is not documented like a historical event. It was a cheap film largely made to advertise the upcoming TV show Adventures of Superman. Both the film and the show starred George Reeves as Clark Kent and Superman. In fact, the movie would even be re-edited to fit into 2 connected episodes, becoming the only 2-parter in the show's 6-year-long history. Episode 25 and 26 of Season 1, entitled The Unknown People. It scrubbed most mentions of them being mole people, and a particular stretch of the film that I'll discuss later was completely removed. But besides that, it was otherwise quite similar to the movie. Well, since there isn't too much more to go over, we can just jump right into it. Superman and the Mole Men, directed by Lee Sholem, released in 1951. Let's get into it. So, after a brief explanation of Superman and his origins, the movie follows Clark Kent and Lois Lane as they arrive at an oil well to write a story. This oil well, the only thing of note in a small town, happens to be the deepest in the world, but as they arrive they find it shutting down quite abruptly. It quickly spirals into a mystery surrounding the odd closing and the sudden death of an old watchman Pops. But the viewers, and then Clark Kent, put together quite quickly that both are in part due to the appearance of some mole men from deep within the well. Drilling too deep revealed some weird sort of radiation and a wide open cavern, as if the Earth's center is hollow. The old man's death becomes likely due to fright from seeing the first creatures, but the populace suspects them to be far more violent. The second half of the movie has the people of the town fearful and on the hunt for the harmless mole men. Superman protects them as best he can, taking one that gets shot to the hospital. After chasing the other around for an absurdly long time, it manages to escape a blazing fire, only to come back for its companion with a few others and a weapon in hand. Superman reasons with them, still sure that they desire peace at the end of the day. After a final altercation with one of the men who instigates the lynch mob, Superman returns their friend to them and they leave happily, but not without destroying the mine and the hole so that they may continue to live without threat of humans. That's the simple plot of the movie. It's only 60 minutes long, so it's pretty easy to condense. So now we'll get into the actual review. Firstly, I think the characterization of Lois and Clark is a lot better than I thought it would be. Lois isn't quite the impassioned journalist she usually is now, but I think her overall sass and attitude feels right for the character. Honestly, one of my complaints is just that she isn't in it enough. A lot more of the scenes could do with her giving her 2 cents. And Clark, he is just a delight. Definitely the biggest discrepancy between a lot of modern Clarks in this version is that in this movie, he isn't really clumsy or bumbling. I think that's a cute interpretation that's quite mainstay now, but I don't necessarily mind its absence. Clark is meant to be a bit of a voice of reason. He is the one sticking his nose into the mystery. He, as Superman, is out to defend those who cannot defend themselves and is always keeping things as peaceful as he can, but will gladly walk in and bend a gun in half if need be. I appreciate at the least that Lois still complains about Clark disappearing at all the important parts, coincidentally whenever Superman is doing all the work. It humanizes him a little. It's always funny as an audience member to see Clark get chewed out off screen before everyone thanks Superman for all the good work. They make really good use of Clark as a journalist. Having him scope out the situation and put together a small mystery is a great way to introduce a threat or a story. Then he can swoop in at Superman to solve it. It's such a strong 1-2 punch. I imagine a lot of the shorter serials or the TV show episodes really make good use of this formula. Speaking of, like I said earlier, this movie is short. Like 58 minutes precisely. It doesn't exactly have room to really drill down on any themes or character arcs, but it also manages to make the whole thing breezy, light, and digestible. I think its runtime is to its benefit, but it's certainly paced a lot more like TV than it is film. I don't think that has to be a problem, but it's definitely good to know going in. It just isn't aiming for the same thing the other films are going for. Now about the story itself, I quite like it. I was a little worried when I hit the intro and it was describing Superman. While Superman started out as champion of the oppressed, as it was put in his very first appearance, after World War II and into the Cold War, patriotism was something much more demanded in American media, and superheroes were no different. So when the opening of the film instead describes him as a valiant defender of truth, justice, and the American way, I was expecting a bit of a different vibe. Something a little more patriotic and on the nose, which is just not something I gel with. But luckily, the themes resonate a lot more with his origin than the whole American way thing. The Mole Men seem so perfectly geared for a group of evildoers, coming up from underground to attack and take over the surface world. That sort of thing is all over comics and comic-adjacent media. But instead, they are a group who are invaded, wrongly accused of violence, and then persecuted. So Superman does everything in his power to protect them. Of course, it isn't a woke masterpiece, unfortunately. Essays could be made about the othering presence here, and its conclusion that we should all just keep to our own. I don't love that. Essays better than this video, to be honest. But I do think it genuinely has something quite interesting to say, especially in such a small-scale product. Also, when you consider that it came out in the 50s, 10 years before even the Civil Rights Act. It feels like it honors Superman's socialist origins. It's cool. So the story hook has quite a strong heart to it, and I like the main characters. These are strong foundations. There's a lot good to appreciate here. I think it's worth tackling a couple of the other elements here too. Visually, I think the movie is mostly pretty good despite its low budget. The Mole Men look very off though. I think the decision to cast little people is nice as to provide them roles, though I'm not sure how they would feel after doing these inhuman roles, mostly due to their height and proportions. I can't say. One of them is even Billy Curtis, who plays in the film High Plains Drifter, which is a Western favorite of mine. Though unfortunately they are uncredited, which is pretty fucked up. The costumes they put these people in are not the best though, it's really where the budget shows the clearest. These mole men have the cheapest, ill-fitting bald caps, awkward hair glued to their hands and the like, and that's most of it. I find it a little endearing, to be fully honest. Dorky practical effects can be super charming, but this isn't exactly it. What instead does work well is the showcases of Superman's strength. This is not really a story about punching people and fighting or whatever, so he's very stationary. Honestly, the pacifist sort of undertones in the narrative are likely derived from their lack of budget. Superman does fly every now and then, and I think it looks pretty good. I love the whoosh of air and the small scraps and newspapers that flutter behind him. When angry mobsters fail to sock him, it really communicates his strength. I mentioned the bending of the gun, that's a classic Superman thing and it looks great. There was one sort of cheap effect that was a little funny. At one point in the film, Superman gets shot at, and instead of any visuals that show the bullets pinging off of him or not affecting him, there's just nothing. A shot showing the gun being repeatedly fired, then cut back to Superman standing there. Nothing flies onto screen from the barrels of the guns, it's just kind of dead air. That definitely looked goofy. Near the end of the movie, there is a direct confrontation between the Mole Men and the ringleader of the violent mob. The Mole Men had gone home to retrieve some help and a means of defending himself. The little weapon they made looks so good, I'm in love with it. I love the way it looks like it's stomach mounted. It feels so alien, but also kind of intuitively convenient, like the stock of a rifle, but for something much bigger on a much smaller body. It's smart, it's cute, it's sci-fi, and it's cheap. Checks every box, it's great. The drawn-on effects of its blast are also quite charming, something I see a lot in old 60s and 70s kaiju movies, which I'm a big fan of. The resolution, where Superman refuses to threaten them even once and gives them their friend were they trying to retrieve, also feels really good and satisfying. He saves the mob ringleader, ensuring that no harm comes to anyone under his watch. I like the line he gives as well, saying that saving the man is better than he deserves. It feels true to Superman's goody-two-shoes spirit, while still clearly staking his claim in the conflict. It's idealistic and it's simple, but I feel like that's Superman's MO. It works great. Now, all of this will probably make you think that I absolutely adore the film, and I mostly do like it. I think it's quite solid, but I think its negative side can be quite easily summarized into one issue: emptiness. The movie is short, and most scenes don't waste a lot of time, but when it does, you really feel it. There were a couple bits with the Mole Men that last much too long, and some plot lines that kind of go nowhere. There's a mystery in which everything the Mole Men touch begins to glow. It ties them to their origins and is built up throughout their film, but ends up amounting to like nothing at all and kind of feels like dead air in retrospect. Seeing the Mole Men explore the surface world can be fascinating for a short while, but as it drags on, we don't really learn anything or gain anything from it. They just meander from place to place, being confused and enamored. It is stretched out a bit too much. Now, that isn't really the worst in the world. It's still very manageable, and there's more than enough to keep you interested. That is until the second act of the film. One of the two Mole Men have been shot, and the shooters chase down the remaining one while Superman rescues the other. And this chase scene lasts upwards of 10 minutes. At one point, it ends up in a little shack, which the men then have to burn down, and it manages to escape, which they don't notice. But a whole sixth of this film is just one long chase sequence, and all that you get from it is that they're relentless, but then the Mole Man gets away. This could be communicated in like 2 minutes. It's such a space filler. It's long, it's repetitive, it has nothing to do with Superman or Clark Kent or the mystery. We already know that the guys chasing the Mole Man sucks. It's not useful, it's so boring. Funnily enough, this was the sequence that was cut down massively in order to make the movie fit into 2 TV episodes. I imagine they are probably a better viewing experience because of it. It's such a drag. But overall, when looking at the positives and the negatives, I still think this is a fun little movie. It is a lovely time capsule and gives you insights into Superman's presence back in the 40s and 50s, while still delivering an interesting story with genuine relevance to this very day. Clark is fun and interesting, Lois is sassy and delightful, Superman is good and inspiring. Despite its errors, I do like this a lot more than I thought I would. I think a lot of the time with movies like this, it will get a bad rep just for being small scale and old, as if the lack of some grand ambition or dazzling visuals inherently slot it into the old and bad category. It has terrible ratings on review sites like Letterboxd and IMDb. It's such a shame. Of course, everyone will feel differently when trying to give rankings and ratings to a subjective medium, but personally, I think this will hold up on my own list for quite a while. Because this is the first episode of the series, I have nothing to rank it against. So in lieu of any sense of reference, I'll just tell you that I do quite like the film, and I think it will remain on the mid to upper half of the overall ranking by the end of it. There are a lot of bad, boring, sloppy films with the DC branding. I do not count this movie amongst them. So if you haven't, go check it out for yourself. It's worth it. Next time I'm going to be discussing the Batman movie, released in 1966. If you hope to hear about my thoughts on that, then please do subscribe and leave a like. Thank you so much for watching until the very end, and I will see you next time. Goodbye.